Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar where we're going to take a look at a couple of capabilities with Creo extension for geometric dimensioning and tolerancing, and also model-based definition. My name is Rob Romanowski. I'm the Director of Sales Operations with 3HTI, and leading an overview and a live demo today is Paul Dye, who is a solutions consultant and applications engineer with PTC's Virtual Center of Excellence. And also, I consider today to be a big day for our country, being that it is the 248th birthday of the United States Marine Corps. So if you served in any capacity with our military or National Guard or Coast Guard, thank you for your service. And if you served in the Marine Corps, as my father did, thank you for your service, and hoorah to the Marines. So with that, I'll pass everything off to Paul.
All right, perfect. And you can see my screen all right?
Baby. Yeah, I see it. Ton Tavern in Philadelphia. It's where it all started. Not too far from where I live.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, thank you for having me on, Rob. Appreciate the opportunity
Absolutely
to talk today. And I'm going to be going through two main topics today. And first and foremost, going to be talking around just general concept of model-based definition. There's a lot that we do in the sense of building out that type of design work from within Creo. A lot of what we do can be enhanced by some of the different extensions that we have. Really, the main extension that we have to help us out for doing more 3D annotations and dimensioning and tolerancing on 3D models is the GD&T Advisor. So I'm going to be going through both. I'll lay out what we can do from a general capability standpoint with model-based definition, some of the ways that we approach it, and then also how we can go through and enhance a lot of that work using some of these different extensions like GD&T Advisor. So just starting into it, first and foremost, there's a lot of challenges that we want to be able to address around, first and foremost, just doing detailing around our models themselves. Working with 2D drawings has traditionally been the primary way that we have of taking design information from a model and putting it onto a manufacturing type of document. So companies have always done it, and the process really has some inherent issues around it. In order to use 2D to describe something that you're working with in 3D space, you have to use a series of complicated drawings, difficult to read, difficult to interpret. A lot of times a very manual and error-prone process as well. For a lot of people, reading these types of drawings is a skill that seems to be dying off more and more every year. And if you have any misinterpretation of the drawings, it leads to delays, rework, and all compounded by the fact that you oftentimes are going to have changes happening to the 3D model. Whenever those changes happen, you need to make sure that those changes are properly pushed to all the different 2D drawings and done so in a manner that hasn't changed the intended design intent. So obviously a lot of different things that we need to address from a 2D drawings capability standpoint, leading a lot of companies to want to be able to define manufacturing information, dimensioning, tolerancing right on the 3D model itself using 3D annotations, or what we would normally refer to as model-based definition or MBD. But even people working with that, they have different issues out in the industry trying to do 3D annotations. They can sometimes be cumbersome, or you simply aren't able to detail and dimension everything that you typically would on a 2D drawing. What we've also seen is just a general lack of support whenever it comes to 3D annotations. A lot of companies have standards and rules that you need to be able to follow there. And you also need manufacturing documentation to include all of that. Lastly, we see just a general resistance to process change a lot of times. 2D drawings have just simply always been a part of the process. Teams don't want to go through and walk through a painful conversion process to reach a state where they can define all that from the 3D model. And it's tough to get through and be trained up on that type of process as well. So what we've done is take a lot of those different challenges into consideration. And for a lot of the different previous releases of Creo, all the way up until Creo 10, what we've done is add in a lot of different capabilities in Creo and add specific purpose-built tools to effectively use model-based definition in Creo. So we're going to be able to create the 3D models that contain all the information, all the data, and do it in a way that is going to be accurate and efficient. First and foremost, just starting with some of the main capabilities that we have in Creo around model-based definition, we of course have the ability to lay out our 3D annotations. We have robust tools that allow you to go through and quickly and easily create, edit all the annotations that would have traditionally existed on the 2D model. That includes things like your dimensions, tolerances, datum features, notes, this can now all be defined easily right in the model itself. One thing that we use a lot of times for helping us out with this is combination states. It might be something that you've worked with, maybe not, but combination states in Creo allow you to view the model in different states, orientations, even different appearances to allow you to group and define different annotations into a more clean and easy to use format. So we want to move away from having those hard to read 2D drawings that have hundreds of different annotations all crammed together. Now that we have the 3D model that we can utilize, it's much better to organize the functional intent around those annotations. Symbols is another big key component for how we define the products that we're designing. So we're going to give you a simple, streamlined user interface for placing, creating, and editing those symbols as well. Now, some of the different other main capabilities that we have here, model check is something that you could use a lot of times from within Creo. If you haven't, but we see a lot of companies utilizing this during the process to help ensure that you have your different company standards or modeling best practices being followed. Helps people as they're getting up to speed with model-based definition as well. So from a general usability standpoint, it can help there. On the note around doing that as well, you can also ensure that you're following company best practices. You can ensure that any 3D dimensions or tolerances that you define are following industry standards, whether it be for your ASME or ISO, got you covered there. And ultimately, what this is all looking to do is find a digital thread for the products. There's a lot of PTC, but essentially what we want to be able to do is have a closed loop between the physical products that we have out in the real world and all the digital information that that's where we see companies working towards what we call model-based enterprise, or all the organizations that use model-based definition aren't just doing it for design. You can do it for manufacturing, commission, operation service, all those different things. Now, these are all main capabilities that we have in Creo, but we do have specific purpose-built tools that are really going to help us out in this process. So the main tool that most companies that use Creo are actually starting to utilize as well, as you're getting ramped up into model-based definition, as you're starting to work with this more and more, is the GD&T Advisor. It's an extremely powerful tool. And what it does is it gives you expert guidance on the application of your GD&T, as well as validation that it's been done correctly. So if we're going to go take a model, typically if you're just doing any type of annotation, you're just kind of left up to your own to go through and figure it out. But GD&T Advisor is going to help us. It's going to take us, if we were to apply a tolerance, it'll give us suggestions based off of the part of the feature that you select. It's also not going to give you options to apply a tolerance, say if it was invalid for a certain feature. So it's very powerful, making sure that you're doing things accurately, making things more educational as well. So if you have a user that's getting ramped up on model-based definition, this is a tool that you're going to want to use to get context into any of the advice that you're receiving, to better understand some of the changes that need to be made. So very powerful tool, and I'll go through and show what it looks like today as well. Of course, a few other ones just for reference. We have the easy tolerance analysis extension. This is something that we use for evaluating the impact of tolerances and dimensions in the design. We're able to do that right in the product well before it would ever go out for manufacturing. And this is something that we play in with our 3D annotations. So you can look at different statistical results, potential defects, worst case scenarios, RSS, even which annotations have the highest contribution to the goals that we're after in the model. So all things that are very useful. And one thing that I want to mention is the fact that we want to make all of this 3D content in the models easy to consume for the downstream users. One of the main ways that we have of doing that is with Creo View. This is something that we always have available for our users. It's free to use. It's a visualization and markup tool that we provide so that anyone from within the organization can view and interrogate the models without ever having to actually open up Creo Parametric or the native Auth3 tool. So it helps out very much there. And we do have some other extended sharing options like JT or Step AP242 for anyone that prefers to work in separate visualization tools. But we do make it very easy for our downstream users to get access into these 3D models. All right, so I'm going to go through a demonstration and walk us through both parts of this here. So first and foremost, we'll just speak a little bit more into model-based definition from within the context of our parametric environment, see some of the kind of standard capabilities that we have in Creo. And after that, what I'll do is take a second step and we can look at the GD&T Advisor to see how it's going to help us in that process and how it's going to take something that might have been more error prone previously and really validate those models for us, help us to build out the correct annotations and help us to share the correct things downstream. So Before I do that, if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. Anything that you want me to explain any further around, more than happy to do that as well. All right, so let's go ahead and switch over here into our Creo parametric environment, and we can go ahead and start by pulling up the model that we want to work with. And really the idea behind model-based definition is that we want to fully transfer over from doing 2D drawings into working with these more 3D annotated models. So in order to do that, we need to come up with some way of sharing the information in an easy to access, easy to use, easy to consume method. So first and foremost, of course, we're going to be taking into consideration your different specifications, different ASME standards like 14.5, 14.4.1, whatever it may be. So we're going to go through and create annotations, and we're going to create GD&T, and then we can look at how we're going to go through and present that information downstream. And what you're seeing here are the different combination states, like I mentioned. This is a way and really a schema that allows people to consume that information, much in the same way that you might do on a 2D drawing. So anything that you would put on a 2D drawing, you're going to see here embedded from within the model. So we start out with some of the basic combination states. And so things like properties and datums and notes, and have that all included here. And as we move over to the right, we move into combination states, which are going to help us to define actual features. That's where we're going to go through and see annotations, dimensions, GD&T. And we can also go through and create these very easily just using the annotations tab, create new combination states, update combination states. And you also can go over to the view manager. This is where you can go through and put further content in there as well. So if I wanted to add in a cross section, something along those lines, or add in additional options for the specific view, specific orientation, that's all going to be able to be done there from our combination states. Right. And if we want to go through and start to add in some features, you can do it in a couple of different ways. We're going to start out with the annotations tab. So here we're going to add in a note with almost all of our different annotation elements. Everything's going to be semantically referenced. So again, any of the different dimensions that we have in the model, they're actually going to be updated from the surfaces and the geometry. So there's going to be a direct correlation. If we go through and make changes to any of our dimensions, it's able to update all of those on the fly as well. All right, so here we can go through and get these laid out. You can see here if you need to change the orientation of anything, that's also very easy to go through and do as well. All right, so with any of these different combination states or different references we want to lay out, you're going to have an annotation plane. So how we're going to dictate how the dimensions or GD&T nodes going to show up. And we can go through and select on the surfaces that we want that to be referencing. And that's all going to be good to go there as well. So that's part of that semantic definition that I mentioned before. All right, let's go ahead and look at a few other ones here as well. So here we're going to be adding in a dimension here on our model, and we can go through and select on the references that we want to work with here. So here we have our counter board that we might want to go through and place a 3D annotation from within here. And that's looking pretty good. And you can always go through and add in prefixes, suffixes, anything that we're working with here as well, different dimensions or symbols that we want to add in as part of that as well. And again, anything that we would add in there is being checked against the different standards that we're working with. So ASME or ISO, always good making sure that those are going to be done in the correct standards as well. So if you were to add in anything there that wouldn't be correct, it would at least let you know that there's something there that wouldn't be correct. All right, and we can go through and add in some different geometric tolerances here as well. So here you can see it's very easy to go through and update any of the tolerance of the datum information. You just simply go up to the top and add that in from the ribbon interface. So anything that really that we would do over on the 2D drawing, we would be able to do right there as well. That's just a quick look into adding in some baseline dimensions from within the base of Creo. What I want to go through now and talk a little bit more around is doing this type of work over in our GD&T Advisor. So what this will do for us here is take any of the legacy GD&T that you may have created in the annotations before, and we're going to apply these different rules to it. And in places where it finds things that don't apply or don't match the rule set, it's going to give you some different options on how to fix your annotations. So I can edit it right here from within the feature tree. And you can see that it's also going to give us some information and give us some context into the advice that we're receiving. So me as a user, if I haven't received that type of information before, very useful for me. I could do a little bit of learning and have that information for me going forward at just a click of a button. All right. Here we go. So we can go through and start to work with this here as well. You can see that it referenced and gave me a recommendation for what we need to place there. So with that, there's no guessing. It just gives us that value, gives us that characteristic that we might need for the particular feature that we've selected, and is making sure that any of those different areas that we added in are going to be correct as well. And the advisor tree is, of course, making sure that some of those different things that we're editing there as well are all going to be up to date, and making sure that we're still adding in the correct information there as well. And we can also go through and add in a general profile note. So what some companies will often do is detail out these critical characteristics, and then for every other service, they'll just apply a profile requirement to control it in that fashion. So in that way, you're not putting a dimension in GD&T for every single feature, just the ones that are most critical or the ones that are most important for the customer or the front-end user. Right, and here we have some places where some of the syntax might not be up to the latest standards. So this is where we can go through and in some cases remove those or simply just do an update, whatever it might be in that sense. And from there, we can manage our annotations to look at mismatched or unvalidated items. It'll simply be by selecting that, just hitting update. And you'll notice that what it'll do is change that back and put in the requirement around those as well. And we can check that over in the model tree or the advisor tree all the while we're working. And so it's able to do that automatically there for us. And here we can see again any of the unvalidated features. So we can see we can go through and manage those as well. So really just go through and check with the advisor. It's going to allow you to jump back and forth and just make sure that any of these areas that are unvalidated or mismatched, you get quick access into it. You can see where they're located, and really it's going to clue you into where to do that work as quickly as possible. There's no having the designers have to go through and do that type of investigative work. All right, so we can go through and look at our different tolerance features, and we can go through and add in different dimensions here as well. You can see that we have the ability to go through and do an auto match there. We can add in different values or different tolerance information right on top of that. Okay. Go ahead and work a little bit forward into here. And again, that's just something that you can work right back and forth between the two. So that's one thing to mention here too, is that whenever you're doing your different dimensions or tolerances right here from within the 3D environment, you can get these all laid out and then jump right back and forth between the GD&T Advisor in order to check those, in order to validate that what you're building out is correct. Specifically for any users that are new to model-based definition or GD&T, they don't have to do guesswork. They can be very sure that any of the information that they added in there was correct. And then if there's anything that they didn't understand, it's very easy to go through and get information into that as well. All right, so again, if we want to go through and do some further work here, say you want to do some composite tolerance, put those in place. This is where you can go through and make your different selections for primary, secondary, tertiary items associated with that. And once we have that in place, we can go through and then share this information out. You can go through and you can print based on different combination states. You can pick which states are appropriate to print. You can choose which ones that you're interested in. One thing that we can also do, like I mentioned earlier, is use Creo View. So this is something that someone downstream might be utilizing. So we can put this into a view file. And one of the things that you'll have to take into consideration is something like a recipe file. So this is where we can select on that. And we can essentially just set it up in a way where it's publishing out the annotations, all the different combination states, and all the information correctly so that we can see that view and utilize it downstream inside of Creo View. All right, so that's another important piece of the equation. So anyone that's over in quality, manufacturing, purchasing, any of those downstream users who aren't necessarily Creo parametric users, they might need access into this information. So I want to be able to make it accessible in this lightweight format. I'm going to be able to publish all the different combination states that you're seeing here, and they can pull it up and view it. And they don't have to necessarily be Creo parametric designers in order to do that. One thing that we can also do here is a check function. So just like we've always had in the past where someone would take a drawing and take out their red, yellow, green pens to mark it all up, you can do the same sort of thing over here in the design check tool as well. So you're going to go through and select on which combination state that you're interested in working in. And then you're going to go through and select on the individual annotations. You can add in notes as required, additional content to help people downstream, and then save that as an annotation set as well. And this is then going to get saved with the model, or if you're working with Windchill, get saved back over into windshield environment with that iteration of the object. Go ahead and get that saved off, and you're good to go. All right, so that really covers a lot of the main areas I want to touch on today. So one thing I do want to mention is that everything that we did there was in a part level. If you did have assemblies that you wanted to do this same sort of thing on as well, that works perfectly fine as well. The GD&T Advisor also works over with assemblies, and any of the model-based definition that you'd want to do there works just as fine. But again, any questions that you might have, feel free to drop those in. I'm going to go through and just kind of wrap up by mentioning some of the main value that we see from some of this. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in. But looking at it from a benefits perspective, first thing being very clear design intent. That's really the main draw of working with model-based definition. It's the fact that you're able to define and lay out 3D annotations in Creo. It's much easier to understand the features and the dimensions that we have in the model. And using tools like GD&T Advisor, make sure that all the things that we're going through and laying out are going to be most accurate. Not going to have mistakes that are going through that wouldn't have been caught earlier on in the process. Collaboration and communication is also very greatly enhanced, whether it's for engineering, manufacturing, downstream users. You're utilizing the digital thread to connect each of the pieces there using things like Creo View or different sharing options that you have from Creo. And ultimately, you're going to have improved quality because things like GD&T Advisor are reducing the errors that are typically caused that you have by someone that lays out unclear or complex 2D drawings. It's making that a lot more efficient, and we're getting our users up to speed that much faster. So at the end of the day, saving us different time and costs in the long run. All right, so that covers everything that I wanted to touch on today. Obviously, these different areas that I touched on are constantly being improved. Every single release of Creo that you see pretty much has different enhancements being done over in model-based definition and the GD&T Advisor. So if you haven't seen it in a while or it's something that you haven't explored into in the past, definitely something that I would recommend checking into because a lot more companies are starting to go this way as well.
Yeah, we could do a custom demo for you at any time. All you have to do is just contact us, and it's pretty easy. So all you have to do is just respond to the invitation that was sent to you. Those responses come to me, or you can contact us at info@3hti.com. So Paul, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate the demo. Great job. And also, if you want to know about Windchill, if you want to know about augmented reality, other PTC solutions, we can absolutely help you out as well. So what I'm going to be doing is, we just got a question about how do you get a copy of the presentation. So everybody who registered for the webinar, I will have this uploaded to our YouTube page probably sometime today, and an email will go out today with a link to the recording of the presentation. So good question, and thanks for asking. So next Wednesday, we're actually going to have a Windchill webinar next week on Wednesday, the 15th. We're going to take a look at how Windchill handles supplier management. I don't know if that's necessarily applicable to your role or not, but if you do get an email regarding this webinar and you feel like it's appropriate for somebody else in your organization, feel free to pass it along. So thanks again for being on, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.